All right, everybody. I'm here today with Tara Clack from Mountain Lily Studios. And Tara is an interior, are you officially an interior designer?
Yes, I'm an
Okay.
interior designer.
So Tara is an interior designer, and she works primarily with businesses to help them figure out how to incorporate more wellness into their office space. And she is going to share today about the gift of space and how we can use the space around us to help us create a little more calm, to help us nourish ourselves, and to really make sure that we are in a good place to be working from home, as so many of us are doing these days. So Tara, thanks for being here today. And will you tell us a little bit about your background and how you kind of got into this particular role in interior design?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having me here today too.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm an interior designer. I hold a 4-year degree in design. I've been in the industry now for nearly a decade, and I kind of stumbled upon it. Well, let me back up. With design, I've always felt that how we create our spaces is really important to our health and well-being. Being that design impacts us very drastically. We spend 90% of our time indoors, so how could it not? Um, I spend a lot of time in the architecture and design field, and anyone who's been in that field can understand the burnout that goes along with that. Lots of long hours, long projects. And for me, it became very important to focus on our health and well-being, not just in how we create space in our lives for our nutrition, our exercise routines, yoga, meditation, but also in how we create space. So I ended up getting into this very niched branch because of that. So while it was a struggle to be working 70 hours a week till midnight and so on, it really pushed me to find my passion and to be able to help others who might be struggling, and also to help businesses really create that culture of wellness for them and their employees.
I love that. I think that's so, it's so funny because I think we talked about this before the call, that I work in my basement a lot. And luckily we're going to touch on this a little bit here coming up, but I do have some natural light down here, but I just got some plants down here, and it's amazing how much it has changed my mood and just I enjoy, our basement doesn't feel like a basement now to me anymore. It feels like an actual home in our room in our home versus just like the dingy basement, which is
Yeah.
nice because that's where I'm spending all my space, all my time right now.
Yes. And the thing is that we are a part of nature, right? So we build these four walls up around us, and we segregate ourselves from the natural environment as humans in the modern world. But in all actuality, we are still a part of nature, and we crave being a part of it, whether it's through biophilia, which is plant integration, or natural lighting and natural materials. We want to be near that. And so many studies show that when you create spaces that have biophilic design, that have natural lighting, people are just naturally drawn to that for a reason. So it's just so important for our health and well-being to have that in our lives.
I love that. We'll talk a little bit, because you do a lot with helping people create spaces to support mood, wellness, productivity. So I know you have a lot about the science kind of behind that, because you're making sure that you're doing stuff that has some kind of oomph and research behind it. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about how all of that works? Give us a little armchair version of that.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so evidence-based design is really the practice, and most designers do come from that aspect where it is based off of research studies that show why we do what we do. We can definitely come in and just put some paint on a wall and put down some flooring, but what matters is the intended outcome of it, and so that's backed by science. So with wellness, it comes down to a lot of factors. Oh, and my cat's going to join us today. So pet therapy is really good for the soul. um, but with wellness, it comes down to a lot of factors such as air, um, lighting, nutrition, exercise, and some of those factors. So let's say lighting, for instance. is really affected, really affects our circadian rhythm. So having that is really important. And if you don't have access to it, like we were talking about before the call, having artificial lighting that is daylighting. And what that does is it helps, it dims and adjusts with the lighting of the natural environment. So it also adjusts on the spectrum of the yellow, orange, and blue hues, which is the Kelvin colors. So it's kind of technical, but what it does is it says, okay, when it's bright daylight, it kind of mimics that. When the sun starts to set, it starts to mimic that and gets a little bit more orange. It's kind of like being in front of our phones all day, and not having our blue light filter on when we're looking at it at 10 o'clock at night. We're not tired anymore because that blue light stimulates us, and really impacts our sleep cycle, our digestion, and so many other factors in our life.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
could talk for hours, so cut me off at any time.
no, I think this is fascinating. I love this stuff. I think it's fascinating. We actually, it's funny because we have blackout shades in our bedroom, and they're great for the summertime when it's light for a long time. But my husband keeps pulling them up now, and I'm like, we don't need blackout shades. It is dark until I want to wake up in the morning, which
Yeah.
and I like having them like halfway so that it dims it a little bit. But anyway, I just find it interesting. I have really noticed how much my mood is impacted when I'm either working in the basement versus being upstairs where there's a good amount of natural light down here, but it's not as much as the main level of our house that has windows
Yeah.
everywhere. And it is really interesting just how much the light impacts like how much I'm able to get done, and just I'll come out of the basement sometimes.
Do you feel more productive when you are working upstairs where you have access to natural lighting?
I do, and I can't decide because most days when I am working upstairs, it's because my daughter's not in the house. So
That's a factor. Yeah.
there could be, who knows? It could be because my daughter is not like, right up in my grill all day long, or it could be because of the light. It might be a combination of both, but I definitely feel, I don't know if it's not really energized necessarily, but I definitely do feel like sometimes, some days I walk upstairs and I'm like coming out of my dungeon from the basement. So yeah, it is a different mood, different feel. Mm-hmm. So there were some other things we talked about too. A couple other ways that we can make our home office be a little bit more productive and help it work for us rather than kind of working against us. So what are some other tips other than making sure you've got some good lighting? What are some other tips that you have for helping us,
So,
work better from home?
sorry, I think there's like a delay here. I apologize. So I work primarily business to business, but a lot of times, especially right now when people are working from home, the same theories apply to our home spaces. So one, obviously, lighting is really important. Two, as you can see, I clearly have a plant obsession. So that is biophilic design, bringing the natural environment into our spaces. Is really beneficial for us. Other things that are affected are ventilation. That's a pretty big one. So having that ventilation, natural airflow, temperature control is really a very important one as well. So if you do have a cold space, get a space heater type of things, just like little things.
Right over there. I have my little space heater.
I think mine too.
And mine's actually a space heater and humidifier, which I think is great. I mean, I don't turn on the humidifier function all the time, but definitely when I have it on, it's just nice because I feel like it's so dry in Colorado right now. My hands are cracking. So just stuff like that. So it's nice to have that humidifier function on that. And that's it was, I don't know, $30 or $40. So it's not a big investment, but it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah, and especially, if you're working from home and you don't normally work from home, what small little things can you do that don't affect your budget drastically, but can make a big impact? Things like that, like a small space heater, $40, humidifier. We did talk a little bit about aromatherapy. That can help a lot as well. And I'm not going to say it's put lavender in. Some people don't like lavender. So, find scents that invigorate you or calm you depending on your mood and what you need, and that can help a lot. And we did talk a little bit about paint.
Mm.
That's a very quick and easy way to brighten a space, make it yours, make you feel maybe a bit more productive. So mine right now, I mean, it's a off-white color, but I work in my sunroom, and that's what works for me. I like brightness, and having a smaller space, it helps to make the space feel bigger, so I don't feel like I'm enclosed in a dark dungeon. But paint is subjective, color is subjective. There's a lot of color theory that goes behind it of reds and oranges, tend to be more of those hungry colors. Blues and greens tend to be a little bit more calming and neutral. But again, some people might not like blue, so don't go with blue, right? But general rule of thumb is if you have a small space, do a lighter hue, a lighter tone, and that will help to make it feel brighter for you. Let's see. What other ones did we chat about that can help? Definitely the plants, the paint.
Yeah, the paint.
Ergonomics.
As I'm shifting around because I'm sitting on
I
my
think
floor.
That's what jogged my memory there. So ergonomics. So ergonomics is the study of how your body works within a space. So whether you're at your chair, a desk, a sit stand, and how your bones and muscles stack to feel supported. And that's going to be a little bit different for everybody. Some good rule of thumb with that is creating the right angle. So if you're sitting at your desk, and you can kind of see where my cat is on my lap because that's how she likes to roll. You want to make sure that you're not like hunched over and down. You want to make sure that you have like an upright posture, and that your arms are kind of around a 90-degree angle. So you're not kind of down here, you're not up here, and that will help with your shoulder support. Another really big one is making sure that your feet are firmly planted on the ground. And if your chair is a little bit too high, I'm kind of short, so I had that problem. You can always put something under your feet, because otherwise that can have a tendency to cut off circulation in the back of your legs. So things like that. Also, because we are both yoga instructors, I think we can chat about this a little bit too, the importance of having a strong core. It plays into ergonomics and your posture and how you sit. If you're constantly sitting with your back a little bit rounded, hunched over, and then you're now looking up at the screen, you're causing a big curve in your neck. You're rounding through your back, and you're starting to round a little bit in your low back instead of just kind of pulling in and kind of maintaining that posture, which has a really big impact on your muscles, on your and on your structure, which can impact your day. If you're in pain, you're not going to be very productive. You're not going to feel at the top of your game.
Yeah.
So that plays into making space for wellness in the sense of exercise. I know that sometimes we get so busy with our day, we don't think about it, but even taking 15 minutes to do some stretching or do some sit-ups or whatever it is that makes you feel like, yes, I can do this today, is really important too.
Yeah. I love just the walk, getting outside and going for a walk around the block, even if it's 10 or 15 minutes, because I think, especially for so many of us who are working at home, I mean, I've had days where it's gotten dark and I'm like, I have not left the house all day. I have literally not left my home. And so just to get outside for 10 or 15 minutes and walk, like you get a little bit of exercise, you're breathing some fresh air, and getting a little bit of vitamin D on your face, which is nice. The sunshine. I actually sit, on my floor a lot because I like sitting with my back up against the wall. It's like a nice sturdy way to sit. And then I have yoga blocks where I put my computer on. So I just am like typing here on the floor. You can see my plug right next to me because I'm sitting on the floor. But that's because I realized like we don't have a good chair here. And it was none of the chairs we had were working for me, and I didn't want to buy that. And I'm like, I like sitting on the floor because then I will like stretch and I'll do some yoga poses while I'm working. And, so I think that ergonomics and moving around is really awesome. I used to have a standing desk when I worked in the schools, and I loved having a standing desk. But even that, they say there was that expression where sitting is the new smoking. And then it
Mm-hmm.
was like standing is the new sitting, because so many people were standing, but they weren't standing properly, and they were still using bad, probably myself included, not great posture as you were standing. So
Yeah.
I think no matter what you're doing, whether you're standing or sitting or on the floor or on a chair or whatever, I think we have to be really aware of our body position, because we are spending so much more time on our computer right now, and we're not innately getting up and moving around to go talk to colleagues and do all these things. We're literally sitting and staring at a screen for
Yeah.
most of our day. Mm-hmm.
For me, one thing that really helps is setting a timer. So if I have a tendency when I am in the middle of a project, or especially if I'm doing some very technical like CAD work and architectural plans, I get really honed into what I'm doing, and I can blink and it'll be 5 hours later. So for me, I find it really beneficial to set a timer on my phone every hour, so that I make sure that I get up and I go move, I go do something, and just take that time away from our screen too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
think about how often we're continually looking at screens, even now more than ever. Like our meeting, would have been maybe in person before, and now it's on a screen. So I find that to be really beneficial. And one thing too, you mentioned, because you're sitting in a, more of a yoga pose on the floor, is also ergonomics, and how we work is different for each person too. So for me, my chair that I have in my office doesn't have any arms. And it's for a reason, because I like to sit cross-legged. I like to put my leg up. I'm very much a wiggle while I work person. And so I think it's important to know how you like to work and how you like to sit with good posture.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely like some people love sitting on the floor, and some people are like, that's crazy that you sit on the floor. But
Well,
it
get
also
back up.
it also allows me to like spread out all of my stuff in like
Yeah.
this giant massive circle around me that I'm looking at right now, like, oh my gosh. So anyway, well, this was so great. So tips for those of you, just to kind of recap, tips for working at home. If you can get some plants, make sure that the temperature in your space works for you. Maybe invest in a space heater. If not, check in with the color of the walls. Maybe get some, quick, it can be like $40 for a couple cans of paint. And
It's more than that nowadays, but yeah.
yeah, I haven't painted in a while. So anyway, but either, less than $100, let's say, depending on the
Yeah.
size of the room, to get a nice fresh coat of paint, if that's something. And plants are even less than that. So you can definitely
And
invest in some
so much
plants.
fun.
Mm-hmm. And what else did we talk about? Oh, getting some nice smells, perhaps. That's one of my favorites. I love burning
Mhm.
candles. So if anybody wants to buy me a holiday present, more candles would be amazing. Um, and then just making sure that we're sitting well, getting up, moving during the day, taking some time out to move around a little bit and get away from the computer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Tara. I appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge with everyone. I will make sure if, again, it's Mountain Lily Studios, and we'll have all of Tara's contact information in all the links and everything for the videos. So thanks for being here today, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with us, and hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.